Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 246 of CryptoBiography, and I'm tentatively titling it Learning French, Melting Brain. And so the subject is me learning a second language. For me, this goes way back. I've tried to learn another language a few times during my life. I did take Spanish pretty much all throughout high school, and unfortunately the teacher was not particularly effective. I don't think I am the only one who believed that. I think the other people in my class also felt that way. In fact, a few of them I've actually talked to and did feel that way about it. Never mind though, obviously my fault as well. So that did not take. And then in college I did take a year of French. Again, I did not keep up with that in this case, and so that went by the wayside. And I was never particularly good at it anyway. I also was a classical studies minor, and I did learn a fair bit of Greek, but it was ancient Greek, and because of that I didn't actually converse in it, and therefore it never really stuck. Like, I did an awful lot of translations for a while, but because I wasn't actually speaking the language and sort of reading it and using it on a regular basis, somehow, getting my phalanx in order didn't come up in everyday conversation. So it kind of went away too. And I'm reasonably well educated, but I always felt that was something. It was like the mark of someone who is educated, that they know at least one foreign language, and I really don't. So recently, I have taken to the app Duolingo, and I've started to learn French. My wife is Canadian-born, still is Canadian, and although she does not really know French that well either, I still think it makes sense that if I was going to pick between, say, Spanish and French, well, in this case, since she's Canadian, we'll go with French. And I really did want to learn, and there's certainly like famous writers that I would love to read in French eventually and stuff like that too. So I've been on Duolingo for well over a year, probably close to 2 years now, and that's fine. It gives me a little daily practice and everything, but at this point it feels very slow, and it definitely also feels as though I'm going to not advance very much further on it, or really much faster than I am. Like, I slowly pick up a word here and there, and it's certainly a good that I'm doing something every day. But it didn't really feel like I was ever, in any real sense, going to get to like a conversational French sort of situation with it. Not that it's a bad app. Like I said, I'm definitely learning some things on it, but for me, it's like I have a hard time forcing myself to do more than a small amount of it every day. Although I've been very consistent, yeah, just getting to the end goal of actually being able to converse in French is going to be a slow slog on if that's all I do. So, but I don't really know anyone. I don't have anyone in my family, close friends who are conversational in French. So what to do about that? Well, I looked around and it's like, you know what? I've got a Disney Plus subscription. I've watched Encanto a few times and have really enjoyed it. Let's try watching it in French. See what we can learn. Can we follow it? We know the story, so can we just pick up some words that way? But there's a problem. I'm not really advanced in French at all. And so I really needed to have both the subtitles be in French and the words be in French. And those are both available. Like, if you go to Disney Plus and you start Encanto, you can listen to it in French. In fact, they have both French and French Canadian. And then they have French subtitles. But there's a problem. They don't use the same translation. So they take the English translation and they do one translation for the voice actors. And for some reason, they don't use that when they're making the subtitles. They do a different translation and do it in subtitles. So of course some of it lines up, a few sentences line up, but most of it actually doesn't. Sometimes in small part, and sometimes completely different. Like, clearly they're saying the same things, but they're doing it in such different ways that none of the words match up. So that doesn't help me learn French, unfortunately. it's not going to work for me to do it that way. I might end up watching it again and either turning one or the other off and trying to do it that way. But yeah, that was not going to work. Trying to learn a new language, hearing some words and reading different words and trying to figure out what the differences are and what the actual translation is. Yeah, that was not working. That failed immediately. So I thought, well, okay, well maybe this is just Encanto. Let's go back. Let's do Star Wars. I am a big Star Wars fan. I've known Star Wars for a long time. I certainly know the English version very well, and I could certainly understand what they're saying by context, even if it's in a different language. And so I watch it. I watch the French one, and unfortunately, same thing. They do one translation for the voice actors. They are saying one set of things, and then the subtitles are saying something different. I don't know why this is a thing, but it is a thing. My guess is that it doesn't come up a lot for a lot of people because, like, you have one language spoken and a different one in the subtitles, and I think that's how most people take in a language, take in a movie in another language, is they do voice in one and subtitles in another, and they don't really necessarily notice that the exact same words aren't being used, and it probably doesn't even matter. So I was disappointed. Then I remembered something, though. The MMO I play, the video game I play, Star Wars: The Old Republic, it's been around for 10 years. It's celebrating its 10th anniversary. And you can actually do Star Wars: The Old Republic, which I also call SWOTOR. That's its nickname, SWOTOR. SWOTOR you can do in French. You can also do it in German, as well as English. And I had done it before, and I remembered that I didn't remember it being like how they did the Star Wars, the movie or Encanto, but that the actual words that were being spoken were the exact same words being written in the subtitles. And when I tried that before, it had not worked very well for me. That was a long time ago. I think I don't remember if I had tried to learn some via an app or not at that point. It would have been in the smartphone era, but I'm not sure if I had actually tried an app or if I was simply going based on, from the little that I remembered from college and whatever, and trying to pick it back up essentially. But unfortunately, because I was doing it solo, I was not streaming it. I was simply just jumping into the game, putting in the French version, and then trying to learn it. It just wasn't working for me at that point. This was, again, like 8 years ago, something like that. What was happening is, like, I was understanding things from context because I had experienced the story before, but I wasn't really picking up on exactly the words and how everything was translating directly. And so I wasn't really picking it up, and after a while I stopped that and I just went back to the English version. So I knew that was a potential issue. However, nowadays when I play Star Wars: The Old Republic, I also am streaming it. So that means there's an audience, which means I can't really, slack on it. So this is what I've been doing for the last week. So I've been taking Star Wars: The Old Republic, starting it up in French, and then playing the game. And Star Wars: The Old Republic is not like some other video games, including a lot of MMOs, where there'll be some things written down in text. There'll be a few cutscenes here and there, but mostly you're just playing the game, and there's not a lot of language that you'd almost have a hard time noticing what language you're in some of the times in some games. Not so in SWOTOR. Star Wars: The Old Republic is fully voiced, lots of cutscenes, basically a cutscene like before and after each mission. Sometimes if you're doing certain things, there'll be several cutscenes during the missions. It's like, it is a well-voiced game, and in fact it has, and it has had for several years now, since it came out, the Guinness World Record for most voice acting in a video game. It still holds that record to this day, as far as I know. In fact, since the amount of voice acting in it goes up every time they add a new expansion or whatever, that's not surprising that they still hold that. So there's lots of stuff going on. And so I started that this week. On this will be Wednesday. Started the game, did some in English, and then closed it down, booted it up in French, and played it in French, and actually streamed it. And I would say that it's going well. Basically, I've done this now every day, and I've done it at least an hour, but basically 2 hours pretty much every day on average. The first day was 3. That was too much. Oh my gosh. By the end of that first day at 3 hours, my brain had just melted. I just could not. I wasn't even reading anything. Everything was sliding by. I was like, okay, I've got to call it good there. Bye, everyone. And I was in a fog for a while after that. Yeah, learning a new language this way is pretty tough. I think I've heard from people who have sort of immersed themselves that it feels like that for them. Only more so, of course. Like this is way more than what I'm doing. I'm just doing it during the course. During the course of a day, doing it for a couple of hours, as opposed to like if you like immersed yourself completely and you were like just in a foreign country, say, and not doing anything in your native language and only learning the language that way. That would be very fast. But I have heard that when people do this, that the first day or two, like if they are prone to headaches, they get headaches. They get brain fog. They get very tired. That's how I felt. Like I felt very much like that. I was absolutely exhausted that first day. And so I made sure not to do 3 hours after that. I think I did 2. I did 2 after that, 2.5, back down to 2, and then I did 1 hour today. And 1 hour, even 1 hour is I could definitely tell by the end of that, it's a bit of a strain. So but I think I am learning. It's hard to tell because this isn't a situation where I'm getting formally, tested or anything like that. So it's difficult to say how fast I'm learning, but it does feel like certain things are catching on. I'm noticing there's certain phrases and certain words that I, now recognize immediately that I wasn't before or just hadn't come across. Now, of course, because this is a video game and it's all about Star Wars and doing missions and stuff like that, I'm learning a lot of words that you wouldn't necessarily use in common everyday French. Like I'm not learning the weather or how are you feeling or when is work or do you have homework, and I'm not learning that sort of thing. I'm learning find the enemy, destroy the enemy base, stuff like that. But of course, there's lots of words and phrases and stuff that are going to be useful anyway. And I'm also learning a lot about certain tenses that don't really come up on Duolingo. Like Duolingo is very they start you out in the present tense, and you stay in the present tense. And then there's a little bit of future tense, there's a little bit of past tense, and very little else, and now I'm doing it this way. I'm actually getting into conversations where, would you be able to do that? Or, could this happen? Has this happened before? That sort of thing. There's a lot of tenses and what ifs and other sorts of grammatical situations that are, maybe they're on Duolingo at some point, but they're so deep into it that it's going to be ages before I ever get to it. So, every night, except for tonight, with 1 hour, I'm tired, but I'm not completely brain fogged. But every night before this, since Wednesday, so for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, last 4 days before today, I've been completely brain fogged after my stream. So I stream, I'm and that's another part. It's it's not only is it because of the foreign language, it's also just because of the extended amount of focusing. Boom, I go out and do some fighting and whatever, and then as soon as I get back into the conversation, it's focus and trying to get everything translated. And it's a lot of fun, actually. I am enjoying the process, but it is extremely tiring and extremely enervating. I actually do feel drained at the end of these sessions. So I'm having a lot of fun. It is definitely brain draining. I think I'm learning. I'm definitely going to stick with it. So maybe I'll be able to do some sort of update, in hopefully not just another week, but, later on. I did not get very much writing done this week because there were a couple of nights where I did sit down and I was able to get some writing done. But most of these nights, because of the brain fog that I'm experiencing afterwards, I was not able to get my brain motivated in order to get the writing done. I did get some writing done, but maybe half as much as I, kind of need to for a real episode. And so I have more writing to do, and I'll have to get back into it, properly. And hopefully things, as I learn the language better, things will go more smoothly. I'll be able to, do a stream without feeling completely tired at the end of it. I'm hoping, hopefully I'll learn more of the language, and, hopefully it'll just go well. I would say this is actually a very interesting way of doing it, especially for someone like me that doesn't have a lot of other options. I could pick up another app. Certainly I could do more Duolingo every day, but that at some point that starts to feel like just straight up work. And plus, like I say, I really do think I need to be in something more like a conversation, and this is very much like a conversation. Now, granted, I'm not having to respond because the response is done by my character, and I translate that as well. But it's, again, I'm translating it. I'm not just coming up with it and speaking it. So this is probably not the absolutely ideal way to learn. That's the ideal way. We go to a place where they speak French and just jump in and do that. But unfortunately, that's not really possible for me right now. I don't think it's between, COVID and everything else. It's like there's a lot of reasons why it's not really possible right now. Anyway, so I'm really enjoying it. If you've been trying to learn French or want to brush up on your French and you happen to be a Star Wars: The Old Republic player, consider it. You don't have to play on the French server. You just boot it up. Apparently it's a little different on the stream. You can get Star Wars: The Old Republic through Steam as well nowadays. It works a little differently that way, but because I don't do that through Steam, I don't know all the ins and outs. But for the old-fashioned way of doing it, where I just pull up the launcher, and then before I put in my password, I just change the language, tell it I would like to do this in French. It switches over. It's already downloaded everything for the French client for me. It does that the first time you ever ask it to do that. And then you just jump into the game and everything is in French. You highlight an ability and all the description of that ability is in French, and all the items in your inventory are in French, and basically everything except for maybe a conversation with your guildie who's not French it's going to be in French. Plus, like I say, all the conversations, and unlike other MMOs, Star Wars: The Old Republic has a lot of them. So we're gonna go with it. I'm gonna stick with it. Hopefully, my brain won't be quite as foggy, and we'll go from there. Hopefully, I will, in fact, be able to get back enough to my story to have a proper, full episode next week. If not, well, I guess it'll have to be an update, and we'll go from there. So thank you for listening. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter, and thanks for listening. Words and music are copyright 2022 CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.